So, ultimately, when it comes to being like just not playing the game, right? Obviously, you took a break from the game for a little bit. 'Cause one, I think you said you were busy, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I've been playing,
Mm.
but it's just been like I've had to stop. I had to like stop myself from playing, rather than pushing myself for hours and hours.
But a lot of probably what you're experiencing is you're probably just mindlessly queuing into the game and mindlessly queuing to pubs and stuff like that. Apex requires a lot of mental acuity to play the game and actually like, get really good results, right? That's the
Yeah,
number one thing people struggle with a lot because it's really easy. The format of a battle royale makes it really easy to just spam queue over and over and over again, right? Because the game time's really short. But in games like Overwatch or even like other like kind of more arena based games, it's really because you can die and be like, okay, I died that way. You respawn, you come back, you're again, right? But
right.
especially if you're playing a I'm apologizing, you're my dog, by the way. I have 3 dogs barking right now. One barks and then it starts a chain reaction. The one thing I want you to understand, especially, right?
Mhm.
Especially since you probably watched a good chunk of like ranked too, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
do.
there is a problem that comes from watching really good players in this game because a
Mhm.
lot of the time, right? There a lot of players. So the rank system in this game is not good, as most of
No,
us know.
it's
We all
terrible.
like I'm saying that, and everyone's cheering me on. Woo, yeah, right. Everyone already knows that. And if I'm going to classify how ranked works, right, it works in these skill brackets, right? Because you start in rookie to gold, and this is like the same rank. Rookie is obviously a little bit easier, gold's a little bit harder, but they're basically the same rank. If you just spam queue the game, spam queue, depending on your skill level, right? If you're worse at the game, it takes you more games, but if you're better at the game, it takes you less games, obviously, right? But it's relatively the same skill level, right? And then from here, from gold, uh, as soon as you hit, so once you hit plat, it's a giant wall to hit, right? It's a big change in skill. People can actually like start to shoot their gun. People will actually start having like the concept of team fighting. There's a lot more concepts in play here. A lot better things to execute, right? It's really hard for entry, right? And that's just because of how the lobbies have to fill up because there's 60 people, right? And then when you get from diamond to master, that wall looks like this, right? And the wall from diamond to masters is such a big wall. Most people will be hard stuck like diamond 4, right? The skill level for masters, because masters is the last rank, right? And then it kind of bleeds into pred. But the ability to gain in masters is a whole different horse to tackle, right? It's a big thing because it's RP loss is so high that you have to be really good to fight, right? So if you look at this, the players up here are being grouped with players over here, and this is off screen. Like I can't draw that high, right? It's off screen, right? So the players up here, when you watch really good players in this game, they can ego chat a lot of stuff, right? The average reward they get for the KP, right? Dropping because if they die, right? If a pred player or a master player or whatever dies in a rank game because they made like a wrong swing or whatever, they lose like what 120 RP, 150 RP, and then next game they drop 17 kills, boom, plus 500, right? They lost nothing. They lost nothing at all by just swing, and it's the better way because KP is so important. And the same thing is true in pubs, right? Because in pubs, what are you playing for? There's no rank points. There's no placement. It's just kills. People want kills, right? So people will swing like that in a very similar way. So when you're watching these really good players, they will typically take fights that are really hard for people that aren't as good, such as me or you. I mean, even myself, right? I'm a coach. I don't play the game enough to have really, really good mechanics. And when I'm talking to my students, like, I want to be able to do this. I'm like, you have to understand that you have to be way better than that person to leverage your mechanics against them, right? Apex is a hardcore permadeath game. Sure, there's not quote unquote permadeath, like blah, 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 right? But if you go down, if you're playing no fill and you go down, you're done. It's it. That's over, right? And that's one fight, especially if you're playing like no fill trios, right? It's a 1v3. You mess up one fight, you're dead. It's over, right? And even if you're playing with friends or playing like fill games or whatever, right? If you die, you go down. If you get thirsted, it's basically over. Getting res in this game is such a hassle. I mean, because killing somebody gives you it gives you all their armor, it gives you the armor swap, it gives you all the loot. It's so worth it to thirst people most of the time, right? The importance of staying alive, the importance of being able to understand how to actually play these mechanics, right? Like most people will try and play like these top tier players, and without the actual discipline to actually build the right skills, they'll typically get really frustrated, and the game becomes really hard, and the game becomes really difficult to play, right?
Exactly.
So I'll talk to you a little bit about that today, especially because you watch a lot of Apex. You probably watch a lot of players, even in pubs or whatever, like do stuff like
I
this.
do.
We'll go ahead and let it rip.
Yeah.
I'm gonna try and break down 1v1s here rather than 1v3s
Yep.
because you know on paper how to break down 1v3s. It's 1v1s, right? You know
Yeah.
that, but
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
I think talking about things that are more tangible for your skill level and skill expression are things
Mhm.
that will be better. If you just die because you don't have a gun here, we're just gonna call it. We're just gonna go next. We're just gonna call it. Yeah, okay, yeah, we're just gonna. If you want better characters to know, fill with our characters that actually have abilities, like
Yeah.
Wraith's abilities are like nice and all, but like
Yeah.
they don't do anything. taking really good positioning here. This is just fun. You're playing a little bit passively. You kind of have to, given the situation. I will say that here, the only thing that is, it's an important concept when talking about how to break down fights. And it's really important in no-fill trios, but it's important in every aspect of just fighting in the game, right? So let's talk a little about, if we were to break down the terrain on the inside of this place, right? There's wall here, door here, wall here. There's like a door kind of up here, door up here. There's like the stairs, right? And then if you go down the bottom floor where you were, there's a door here and a door here. Door here, right? When we are actually engaging on a team, we want to make sure that our back is clear, right? Because if we get pushed from our back, we have to have a way to escape. It's really important to make sure. If we're going to, I'll talk about this on the macro scale, right? And macro being, you know, overall game POI to POI thing. But this can be applied on the micro level as well, right? For example, if we are here, right, and we're trying to go this way, and we're gonna play right here, right? We always want to make sure that no team's gonna be in our back, right? So we want to try and not coexist with a team over here if we're trying to take control of all this space. Like obviously, if there's a team here that is coexisting with us, we can't do anything about it. You know, we can't do anything about it. Like end game zones, if it's like this, right? There's like 3 teams here. Like we can't really just kill one, right? It's just gonna exist. But a lot of the time, we want to make sure our back is clear because the more space we can actually control, the better it is, right? So we want to make sure that we limit how enemies can come fight us because that is the whole reason why geometry is really good. You want to use geometry to limit how opponents can push you. You want to use geometry to limit where enemies can come from, right? Let me talk a little bit about this drop, especially here, right? Because when you drop here, your drop is fine. I wouldn't drop here personally, but that's just a personal. When you go here, you don't really know that behind you over here is clear, like up here, right? Because someone probably landed up here on the bins, right? That person has a choice to go inside here or come down here to you, right? If they saw you come down here, they may push you. You have genuinely no idea, right? So when you're fighting people, you want to make sure that you are in a position where you can limit how the opponents can come to you, right? You kind of want to think about how to funnel them, right? Because if you like where you are right now is actually a really solid spot, right? This limits where enemies can come from because an enemy could come from up here, right? An enemy can come from over here, or an enemy can come from over here, right? Over here, you're obviously looking at. That's not a bad spot at all. If someone comes above you, you'll probably hear them. And if they're above you, right? They kind of have to look over, drop down to come get you, right? The biggest threat you have to worry about here is this way, where you came, right? You can't really clear it, right? You can't go kill everybody over there and then come over here, right? Where you are right now is a really good spot for this, right?
Yeah.
Because if someone pushes you from any side, right? If you're shooting guy up here, you can play right here, where you do, right? And if someone pushes you from this side, you can play the back end of this, right? And this is good cover.
True.
This is a really good use of understanding how cover works, right? Now the mistake you make, right, is when you push up to here, right? When you come to here, because this no longer offers you. This actually makes it to where you're possible to peek from more angles than before, right? A good rule of thumb is just to kind of make sure that you always have to have an escape plan. If someone starts shooting in the back, you immediately need to run to like this door or something, right? And what your plan here is to go back through space you don't really know is super clear because people could have because it's been like what 30 seconds at this point. Yeah, it's more important to go to places that you know immediately are safe because again, if you cleared out this whole like if you know the POI is empty. And you know, it's just, and you're having like a clean like 1v3, right? And you know there's somebody else in the POI, you could totally go back here. Right? Let's also talk a little bit on the micro scale, right? When we push up here, like we already pushed up here, right? There's gonna be situations where you make mistakes and you push up like this, right? And that's fine. You push up like this, you take a lot of damage because it trades you. You come back here, right? Now, when you go back this way, right? There's 2 ways you can go. You can go to the left here and to the right. You could have jumped off. No one can be up there. No one can like shoot you in the back up here because this is a cliff, right? You limit which way enemies can come. They can come from the right here. They can come from the left here. But the left is a really long walkway, right? Now, you could argue, right, that that's 3 ways we described here that people can shoot you. You could say that the hallway only has 3 ways as well, right? This way, and then from the door this way, right? This space is so uncontrollable because you can't, you know, if you have to run away, you have to go in the door here. And if 3 people drop from up here, it's so much worse than 3 people dropping from over here, right? Because if you're over here on the side of the door, if you're back on this door here, your escape plan to jump off is way better than an escape plan over here, where you kind of have to play the door and then run over here to probably jump off or break LOS, right?
Yep.
Whenever you're trying to engage people in general, right? If you don't know where teams are, even if you do know where teams are, it's always good to have an escape plan, right? Because again, it can be a very small escape plan. It can be a big escape plan. I'll give on some hands-on examples when it comes to peeking and stuff like that. So let me talk a little bit about how to actually take fights, okay? So the important thing is when we understand, right? The golden rule of Apex is to never be peeked by more than 1 person at a time. That does not mean you can't peek more than 1 person at a time, right? In fact, it's actually probably good in some situations to peek more than 1 person at a time, right? Because because for example, if I go to peek two people, right? And neither of them are looking at me. If none of them are looking at me, I shouldn't go, oh no, let's not shoot our gun. Like, they're looking at me. I should, capitalize on that opportunity and shoot them, right?
Right.
But the thing is, as soon as they start peeking me, I need to get into cover, right? I need to break that peek with them. You can still miss your shots. There's still human error, especially if you're on M&K, right? Everybody whiffs. Everybody does whatever. You can still go enough. Like, obviously, if the person's 1 HP, you shouldn't be like, hey, I'm gonna lose this. Like you should just go. You die now, right? When we're taking fight against somebody, right? We want to make sure that we always have an escape route, and this could be on the micro scale or the macro scale, right? When I talk about proper peeking, right? So let's make a situation where the opponent is holding the angle, right, like this, like they know you're there. You peeked them earlier, they know you're here. They're looking at you, right? They anticipate you, right? Even if they're like running up to you like this, they're still gonna aim here, right? Every player would aim here, right? No one would aim further than that, because someone slow peeks the corner, they have to adjust, right? So the way you want to peek this is something like this, right? The number one goal is to avoid the opponent's crosshair, right? The opponent's crosshair is the worst place you can be, because that's how they shoot you, right? Obviously, you can't avoid being in the crosshair all the time. You end up being in people's crosshairs no matter what, but the whole goal of it is to escape it, right? So when we peek, we want to hard swing the angle like this, right? And the only time you don't want to do this is when the potential for damage is so high that you can just die from this, right? So let's say if there's one person here, right, and we're fighting a 1v1, a slide out like this is perfectly fine to do, right? Because once we're out here, we can manipulate ourselves, right? We want to start by assuming we're going to lose this fight and go back into cover, right? Because we can't, because if we go out here and we are fighting this guy and then we start losing, the time for us to get back here is a long time, right? Like, that's like 0.5 seconds, but that's enough to die if you've... The R9 time to kill on purple armor is like 0.9 seconds, right?
Yeah.
That's... If you're losing a fight, you don't have armor most of the time, right?
Exactly.
You don't have armor, or, you can die really quickly. So we want to go and assume by strafing back into cover like this, right? This is basically a really proper way to peek, a really proper way to engage people, okay?
Right.
However, if we are winning, we can stop it, right? If we go... 100, I beat that guy, you can now start pushing up or something like that, right? You can stay in the open to establish the angle with somebody, right?
Yep.
This person, if they're smart, is going to go back into cover, right? If this person's holding this angle like this, and you start like shitting on them, they're going to go into cover. They're going to go like this, right? But to counter this, if this box was in here, right? Imagine this box was in here. We can just go like this to see them for a longer period of time before they actually make it into the cover, right?
Right.
That's basically the proper way to peek and a proper way to fight on the macro scale or on the micro scale that lets you actually engage people, right? Make sense?
Yeah.
There are times where you want to full send somebody like this, right? But this is if they're in a really bad position, they need to die very, very quickly, right? Like if it's a 1v3 and you go, wait, his two teammates are over there, he's here. Kill this, like I need to fight this guy because I can, this is a really strong opportunity. I don't know if I'll get another one in the future, right? This is not the static how you should always peek, but rather it's where you should start your peek. Does that make sense? And of course, let's update this, right? Against two people, right? If two people are looking at me, I might make the peek a little bit shorter because I need to get back into cover faster, right?
Exactly.
I need to go.
He's got to deal some damage, but also be able to, not take too much damage either.
Exactly. This lets you control the fight. Lets you control the spacing, timing, damage intake, damage output, everything like that, right? Against one opponent, do these wider swings against two or more opponents. It depends on the situation. If they're not looking at you, right, you can still wide swing and then go back into cover, right? You can totally wide swing and then go back into cover. But if it's 3 opponents, you should probably just do these little
peaks.
Yeah, do something like that. More so, okay?
Yeah.
It's important not to do the same thing over and over again, especially because the opponents will recognize what you're doing, right? But since Apex's time to kill is pretty low, and the fights will happen over a pretty smaller period of time. If you do something once and they don't expect it, you probably win the fight off that, right? Unless...
Yeah. One of the issues too is like, when do you actually push? Because how there's so many third parties, especially like in Broken Moon or something. Let's just say that you're kind of dealing damage to each other, but no one's really pushing. That's the hard part sometimes.
That actually brings me to the other part of peeking, right? When we peek like this. Right, especially with these shorter peaks, like with these wider peaks, if we destroy the other opponent, right, we can we can probably kill them in some way, in some capacity, right? However, this peeking is also utilizing gun skill to create opportunities, right? The better and better player you are, the less and less you need to make opportunities, right? But the worse you are at the game, the more you need to make opportunities, right? Fade, for example, does this really well. He will have like a shotgun, right, and he'll go, boom, slide back, slide out of cover like this to finish the guy up, right? Because he hit him with 90 with the Peacekeeper or something like that, right?
Yep.
This is a perfect example of how to actually capitalize and utilize fights, right? He creates opportunity, boom. If he can follow up on it, he does. He follows up on it like this. He breaks the fight into 2 parts. The first part of every single 1v1 and fight that should happen, this can't always happen is the important thing to understand. But if you have control of the situation, this is how you can start a fight. You start a fight with an opportunity. The opportunity can be mispositioning, they've taken damage, it can be anything else, right? We can use a lot of things to create opportunities. A really good example of an underused thing that give you opportunities is grenades, right? A Skynade hitting somebody for 100, boom, opportunity made. You didn't need to shoot your gun, easy cleanup.
It gives you a little bit of an advantage.
There's one last way that is typically seen as a way to create openings, is abilities. Now, the thing is that characters like Wraith are not really good at using their abilities to create opportunities. Obviously, they can. A better example on how to actually get opportunities, Valkyrie. Valkyrie is a really good example of a character who can create opportunities for a team. In fact, Valkyrie is the star entry fragger of every team, right? You can get renocked, you can entry with them, especially, right? Because if you need to push up and fight this team, right? Like the zone's closing, you don't have your spot anymore, or something, you know, you need to fight a team, you need to engage, you throw missiles on them and then swing like this, they can't stop you from swinging, right?
Exactly.
Because they get stunned, they take damage, and you should probably win that trade if that person is, stunned and, they get you have a small damage lead, right? You can easily, punish them for that. 2, if somebody's on high ground, right? If somebody's on high ground, you're like, oh, I need to fight this guy. Boom. Or up here now, right? Well, a character like Wraith can't do that. A character like Wraith has to go dun 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 dun, fight me now, right? And even then, this person's like, bye. Right. Yeah. Let me list really quickly some other ways that we can gain advantages in fights. Loot, weapons, positioning, ring, all like the list can go on and on and on. You can get more and more and more and more specific, right? But these are all things you learn more as you play the game, right? Every fight should look like this. You obviously don't have to go in your brain and put a chart down and then go and then illustrate it, right? But I break down fights in the post analysis of the game, right? When we go, okay, should have fought that? Should we have done something like this, right? We can go advantage, okay? We have to consider and weigh each advantage, right? Because it's like, you need to have armor and good positioning, and you need to have, like, good guns, right? You need to have weapons, and maybe even then you might need, like, a nade, and then that might equal a 1v2, right? Or a 1v3, whatever, right? You have to weigh them individually in your own mind, but if you can split this 1v2 into 1v1s, right? This changes a lot. Like, just good armor can win you 1v1. Good positioning can just win you 1v1. Good weapons can win you 1v1. If you have a Kraber and they don't, well, goodbye, head. Right? Yeah, things like that. It's all about understanding how to leverage these advantages you have to turn them into enemies' disadvantages, right? Make sense?
Yep.
And you want to push every fight once the scale, you can look at this as like a, like a weighted scale. Once the scale is in your favor, right? This it bottoms out this way, push that, right? Use that advantage. You want to make sure that you use the advantage to push, because you just go, I have high ground, and then you drop off high ground to push them. Well, like, you didn't use your advantage to, leverage. Things like that. You can use abilities and things like that. Abilities, grenades, and things like that should, if you realize the opponent has an advantage, aka you have a disadvantage, right? High ground is the best example of a way to use abilities and resources to deny it, right? High ground, Rising Q. Knuckle Cluster can stop them from peeking the angle. Skynades can, push them off high ground, force them to not peek you as you move around. The Valkyrie fly up, like there's so many things that can mitigate high ground and gain high ground. You have to find out ways to cancel out their advantage, or compile an advantage that is big enough to where, if their advantage is high ground, but you play underneath them, well, they can't use their advantage, right?
Yeah.
When you're breaking down fights, you have to make sure that you specifically do this, okay? Especially if you're in no fill, because let's say you're in fill. Let's say you're playing with randoms, right? Your randoms probably won't be with you majority of the time, but if they are with you, right? You swing a guy. Oh, that guy's teammate swings you. 2, oh, you're in a 1v2, your teammate comes and helps you, and it's a 2v2, but you probably took damage in the 1v2. Oh, now there's a third team charge rifle me in the ass. Nothing's fair, right? You can't control and you can't control anything or everything at all, right? The important thing to understand is that this is how you should be taking down and dismantling fights, okay? I don't want you to just brainlessly throw yourself in pubs. I don't want you to brainlessly throw yourself in anything and expect to just kind of be better. You have to do this, and this is how fights are measured, okay? This is when you go into every fight, you should go, oh, I shouldn't have pushed that. I didn't have an advantage. Or you're like, oh, was my advantage really good enough? Or did I just like mess up like mechanically, right? And it's okay to mess up mechanically. You'll get better mechanics as you fight more, right?
Yeah.
Apex, you should just prod opponents, right? And we can use peeking to leverage gun skill to try and get, advantages and things like that. Like, oh, they're cracked, I have a health advantage, anything like that, okay? We'll go and watch a couple more games, but even here, I feel like this is still a good chunk of stuff to, talk about and focus on, right?
Yeah, for sure. So many shots.
Were you nervous here at all? Do you remember?
Yeah.
Good,
I don't
good
know.
cleanup though. Good cleanup though. You got a lot better at the end. The important thing I want you to understand is that even when I coach other teams, right? When I'm coaching this women's team right now, and I got to look at their gameplay for the first time as a team yesterday. I'm coaching them for 4 weeks now. You want to know everything I talked to them about? Starting the game. Getting good drops. I did not look at their gameplay until 4 weeks in. And that's all because they need to understand how to fundamentally approach the game rather than just throwing their brain at it and doing it, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I just want you to understand how to take fights. This is the number one thing.
Yep.
Once you learn how to take fights, once you learn how to do that, you're going to start doing a lot better, okay? You want you to play a little bit slower. You need to play a little bit. Maybe don't drop where there's, like, you know, so many teams. But even then, like, just breaking down smaller fights on the smaller scale will let you do a lot better. I'm going to go ahead and keep playing the rest of this VOD. Nice shot. You had good cross replacement there. Right here is a really good example of kind of the peaking philosophy, right? You never want to be peaking by 1% at a time, right? Right here. You could have played up here. You could have also played back here, right? As soon as you realized, you know, if you're swinging so hard here, like right here, like the swing is a little bit aggressive, but it's still okay, I would say. I would say it still follows in the boundary of okay, right? Like I said, a little aggressive, but you know, at this moment, you need to go. You need to break this peak immediately, right? You need to go that way or go back. Back probably the safer option because you know you don't really know what's over here, right? Back to the space you were is way safer. The important thing to understand is that I can tell that a good portion of you is like yeah, I can kill these guys,
Confidence.
Right? Yeah. And confidence is a good thing to have, but once you miss your shots and stuff like that, there's planning to change. You're like, okay, never mind. There's 2 people still here, right? Because if you killed this guy, I would have been like, this peak's amazing. This peak, continuing to peak this is really good because it's a 1v1 now, right? It's a good, it's a solid one we're going to take. They're down 1, you know, killing this guy gives the armor swaps, blah, 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 right? But once you start missing your shots, the plan needs to become, I need to disengage from this. I need to be able to limit how much they can shoot me, right? I will say that for aim-wise, your crosshair placement is basically where you're lacking here. You're aiming at their legs rather than like their the wingman's. The whole reason the wingman is really strong is because of headshots, right? Obviously, aiming at the heads is a little hard in this game because the visual clarity is really bad. But aiming at like the upper torso area, like here, right, is way better. I could tell you, I could absolutely coach you there and tell you about things you can do better in no-fill, ammo efficiency, economy, and things like that, right? But I don't think it's worth it. I don't think it's worthwhile to tell you to do X and Y because because there's other things you work on first. I don't want you to focus on the wrong things that aren't going to give you like reward because these are more higher level concepts, right?
Yeah.
Because now you don't have loot, now you don't have blah blah blah, right? I want you to go back to basics. I want you to go back to fundamentals, okay? You're trying to do stuff that's way too advanced. And you're trying to do way too much, way too fast, okay? I don't want you to relearn how to play the game, obviously, right? But I want you to focus on just understanding the fundamentals of, you know, how to actually aim, how to actually move, and, you know, how to actually approach fights, okay? That's the most thing you're getting too hard at yourself without understanding, you know, fundamentals. You're kind of just wide swinging things, going, yeah, old me would have hit my shots there, so I'm gonna try and do that, right? But it's like it's important to not look at things with rose-colored glasses or rose-colored lenses, or whatever the expression is. Rose-tinted lens, whatever.
I would do much, much better. And then now it's like I'm just thinking about more stuff, trying to do too much, and instead it's just costing.
So I want you to take the stuff I want you to take the stuff that I covered today, and I want you to focus on this, okay?
Yep.
I feel like we've gotten a good chunk of stuff to actually just discuss and talk about. I want you to focus on you know, relearning your fundamentals, okay?
Yeah.
So don't try and go too fast. Go as slow as you need, and then start to speed up, okay? Always way better to do that.